Welcome to Powered by Her, exploring the stories of how area women power their business. Here from the growing network of female entrepreneurs of the Upper Cumberland with your host Tiffany Ann Ton, director of Biz Foundry. Powered by Her starts now.
Hi, you're listening to Powered by Her in the Hints and Ugly Podcast Center. And today I have definitely the guest I've known the entire longest of my entire life of Powered by Her guests. But I have my own aunt, Jolene Medina, who owns Little Rascals Child Care Center. And so for most of my loyal listeners, they're all like Upper Cumberland, Tennessee businesses. But I was kind of inspired to have you as a guest. And so, hi, Jolene.
Hi, Tiffany. How are
Aunt
you?
Jolene, if we will. So I'm glad that you're here today and that we can do this podcast. And so tell me a little bit of what Little Rascals Daycare Center is.
Well, I started the center. I actually started the daycare out of my house.
We're going to get into all that, but just What right now, if I was a parent walking in, what's your spiel? What's your 30-second, 1 minute, how do you hook them?
Basically that we cater to all of their needs.
And so you have a 0 to or 6 weeks probably-ish.
0 to 12 years old.
12 years old. Okay, so you have an after-school program as well.
Correct.
And you have, within, I say recently, probably the last 5 years or so, you started a preschool program too. So like not just a daycare program, you started a preschool program as well.
Correct.
Okay, so what did you think? We kind of were talking about this the other day, but did you think that you would be a business owner ever in your entire life?
Absolutely not.
No.
Never saw myself. I've never been a risk taker. Never saw myself owning my own business.
And so you're the youngest of 5 kids. You're kind of she's just the baby. She,
Correct.
What's she gonna do with herself kind of thing, right? I mean,
right.
I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but this is kind
That's correct.
the life that you kind of maybe not gonna amount to greatness.
Right.
Is kind of the probably the message that you were told a lot or felt a lot as a child growing up.
Yeah, you are correct.
But you did have a thought of working with kids, and so what did your dad?
I always wanted to work with children, and I actually wanted to start out my career working in social work, and my dad did not want me to. He was afraid I would take every child home with me.
So how old do you think you were when you were along those lines of thinking?
Oh, I was probably early 19, 20.
Oh, so that was like a legitimate career that you were thinking of having. That wasn't like your dream as a little girl.
No, that was a legitimate career. And so then I switched to business. And
just because that was kind of what people did
when you didn't know what else to do. So I did business, got my degree. After my degree, I went into business. I worked out in the business world.
You worked at a bank,
years.
and so you grew up in a small town, a smallish town, and there was a credit union that your dad was really involved with, and so you got a job at that, just kind of the small town feel, like you did what was quote unquote supposed to be done.
Right.
So you just got your job at the bank. And you had 2 kids during that time, and
got married, had 2 kids. Found out I was pregnant for my 3rd child.
And you were doing okay. I mean, you were okay in life. You weren't like, I really want to start a business. I really want to start something new. No, you had no itch.
I was frustrated with the business world. Wanted to be done with it. Found out that I was pregnant for my 3rd son, and when it came to the end of my maternity leave, I just told my husband I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and I remember you saying, I think I kind of want to stay with him. And we're like, you've always been a working mom. You've always, you've done your maternity leave and gone back. And so it was kind of like, what do you mean you want to stay home with him? And so you decided to start an in-home daycare.
Correct.
And what year was that?
Boy, that would have been...
Well, what year was Gibson born?
Oh, it would have been 2006.
2006. So you decided, okay, I'm just going to do this in-home daycare, kind of low risk, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, other than I was missing a big income. So I really had to do something to supplement that income.
With 3 kids in the family, and now, but you were able to then stay at home. But you ran a daycare facility in your home for how many years?
Probably about 7 years.
7 years. And nap mats all over. And how much strain did that put on your family?
It was very stressful to my family. And I didn't realize how stressful till I actually moved the daycare out of there. But once I moved it out, I realized how strainful it was on the whole family. And
so after about 7 years, and you had always kind of talked about getting out of the house and doing something else, and during that time that you were in the house, you went back to school and got a certification or
early ed degree, so that you could be a director of a legitimate daycare and center
and follow all the rules. So then you bought a building.
Yes.
Did you ever think you were going to buy a building in your life?
No, and it just happened. A good friend of ours had come across it, said it was in our town, and that it was going to be going on the market. And so we put a bid on it before it even hit the market, and we were able to purchase it.
Well, so let's go back a little bit to you as a kid. Your mom ran, quote unquote, a daycare, we're saying, because this is, what is this? 70s, 80s?
Yeah, it's probably 70s.
70s.
Part of 80.
She ran kind of a not legitimate business, but...
No, and she wasn't licensed or anything, and she only took, I think, 1 or 2 families at a time.
Did you think of her as an entrepreneur, though?
No.
Entrepreneur wasn't really a word. Even when you started in 2006, did you think, I want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, no, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur.
How long did it take you to get to that point where you felt like...
It really hasn't been that long. I would say probably the last couple of years that I kind of really have started looking at myself like, I'm a business owner. What I do matters.
Right. Well, and I think, in the position you're in, so you're the director of the center right now, and but you are the owner, so all those decisions of buying a business, and yes, your husband is in construction, so I'm sure he somewhat helped you and guided you, but that was your business.
Right.
And so I'd like to say a lot to all the entrepreneurs is like, okay, so you have a degree in childcare or, education,
early.
But that doesn't teach you how to do the books of a business.
No, and I think actually because when I was in the business world, I worked in the loan department, I worked in the checking department. So all of those things really added up when I went to do my own business.
Yeah.
Because I had that background, that knowledge to take in.
But but I think as women too, we have a hard time wearing that entrepreneurship hat because it's like, well, I'm doing what I love, and sometimes, especially when you're doing something you're passionate about, and you feel like, well, this is a lot of fun. But I'm guessing after 14 years in this business, 15 years. It's maybe not quite as fun as it...
It's very stressful, and I put a lot of hours. I put anywhere from, especially from fall to spring, I put in probably 70 plus hours.
A week.
So...
do you regret the decision to not go back into the baking 9-to-5 world? And
no, there's sometimes, but I have a lot of other opportunities. When I want a day off and I can make it happen, I don't really have to answer to anybody.
Right. Well, and that's what a lot of people go into owning their own business for, is that opportunity of being their own boss.
Right. And I had the opportunity to raise my 3rd child myself instead of having him in daycare like my first 2 children had to be.
Yeah. Do you think that a lot of our listeners have gone through both sides of the coin, And there's pros and cons to both sides of being a full-time working mom and being a stay-at-home mom. Can you talk on that at all? I mean,
there are. I mean, my third child, it was very tough for him to go off to school to do things on his own initially because he was with me 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So
he's a little more attached.
Right. He had that, where my two older ones that were in daycare and I worked outside the home, they did great socially, meeting people. They never had hesitations about doing anything.
Well, and the interesting part for you is that I think for myself, being a working mom, I feel more whole and more fulfilled. Not to say it's okay. All of it's okay. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. But I personally feel more fulfilled. But you were able to be a working mom with your kid full time.
Right.
So you were kind of able to have quote unquote the best of both worlds, which I'm sure was a double-edged sword sometimes.
and I did have the best of both worlds, and I will honestly say, and I've said to lots of people, that I wish, my only regret in life is I wish I would have been able to do this with my first two.
Yeah.
Where I could have my job and be with my kids yet too.
Yeah.
It was the best of both
Well, and
worlds.
now it's kind of come full circle. You have your grandchild in the daycare as well.
I had my first grandchild a year ago.
And
now he's in our daycare center, and some days I don't get too much work done when he's around, but
how was it having your own kid in the daycare, especially because at that time it was still in your house, so it was a much smaller facility. It was a much smaller program at that time, so you were really interacting with him a lot more.
It's tough having your own child there. I typically do not even hire girls that need to bring their children to daycare. I typically will not hire them because it's a conflict.
Yeah.
I've had to answer for my own son to other parents.
Yeah.
It is tough to handle. You have to and in my position, being the owner, I had to put that owner's cap on and not be Gibson's mom.
Yeah.
And look at both sides of the story.
Yeah, and it definitely, and I think too, like, just making sure that you are getting him what he needs and treating him just like the other kids, I'm sure is tough.
And not showing any favoritism.
Yeah, or both ways, make sure you're not too hard on him because he's your own kid.
Right.
So, in case you're just joining us, we have Jolene Medina with Little Rascals Child Care Center in Freeland, Michigan. And yes, it's weird that she's not from Tennessee like all of our other guests, but she is my aunt. And so, where have you, 15 years is a long time. I'm sure you've had some ups and downs, and just business-wise, I'm sure you've had, even the world we're living in right now with COVID-19, this is unprecedented of what you've seen, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's been other times where you've had some difficult years financially with the business. Where have you gotten emotional support for this from?
Emotional support would have to be my husband. When we first moved into the daycare center, we opened it. I put my family's financial future on the line doing this. Maybe 3 months in, the phone wasn't ringing a whole lot. Not as fast as I thought it would. In most businesses, they say you need to give yourself 5 years. Well, for some reason, I thought we would right away. We would be full in my mind, and we weren't.
Well, you take that risk, that jump, that leap of faith, and you think it's, oh my gosh, do I need to back out now? How long do I want to hang on?
Right. And I still remember, and I'll never forget it. It was in October. He came in, my husband came into my office, and I was just like, this isn't going to work. I've just financially ruined my family's future. And I remember laying my head down on my desk, and he's like, are you going to be okay? And I'm like, this just isn't going to happen. Yeah, and it was like 1 week after that, the phone started ringing off the hook. And I remember him saying to me, this isn't for everybody. This type of...
Well, and let's add in there, so Uncle Joe has been he's a business owner as well. And how long, when did gosh.
He's been in business for 23 years.
Oh my gosh. It's a long time. So he kind of has gone through the ebb and flow of being a business owner.
Absolutely.
And so he probably has a little bit more support than, we've talked about our family likes to joke around, and you were and so he could probably be a little bit more serious in the fact of like, okay, I see the pain and how difficult this is, where maybe family members might laugh and poke fun.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he knew what it was like. He went through the crash of 2008, and so he knows what it's like. Yeah, but like a week later after that had happened, my phone started ringing off the hook, and we were probably full within 6 months.
Do you think about yourself in the fact of you're a female business owner and what role model you provide for others? Do you think about that ever?
I don't really.
I mean, you've said yourself it's taken you kind of just in the last 5 years to really wear the entrepreneurship hat.
Right.
But I think of like my own daughters, and I've talked about this before on the podcast a bit, but they're here out camping and trying to charge everybody to sweep their porches, and they're asking you guys about owning a business and running a business and all that kind of stuff. I think that's really important for women to kind of not devalue ourselves or undervalue ourselves. And
I will say just little things of, even because I own my own building, there's maintenance issues and I have to call people to come fix stuff, and they I feel that there are times that they look at me like, well, I'm not going to even explain this because you won't understand.
Right. Well, where's the man? Let me talk to the man about the building.
Or they will know my husband because it is a small town. So they'll probably know my husband, and they'll say, well, we'll get with Joe.
Yeah.
And I'll, it kindly explain that, it needs to come to me.
Yeah. Is there any specific situations that you can think of with, something where you did kind of have to stand up tall and say, this is my business. It's not my husband's business. He has his business. I have mine. Any specifics?
One was just recently I had some roof repairs done, and they were like, well, we'll get with Joe and we'll let him know what, needs to be repaired, and had actually sent the bill, all the information, which the bill wasn't a bad thing to have sent to him, but they sent everything to him, and he had to pass it along.
Well, and I'm sure and like I was kind of saying earlier, Grandma, your mom, in the 70s and 80s was somewhat of an entrepreneur herself, but she would never say that herself.
Oh, no.
She would just say that she just, watched kids here and there, and she really could have, but I think at that time in the 70s, women weren't encouraged to own their own business. It was always, who's the man behind the woman that's going to run things, and at the time, your dad was working full-time, so this was just supplemental income for her to bring in.
This was just kind of almost play money for her.
Yeah. Do you feel like, do you ever feel disappointed that she didn't, because she could have done what you've done.
Well, she will even say, I've heard her laugh a couple times when she hears how much I make, that she's like, I got paid $5 a day, or $5, or, $10 a week or whatever, to watch children, and here I make way more than that. So.
You make more than $5 a day.
Right. So, she'll laugh about it. Boy, that, I wish I could have made that back then.
Yeah. But do you think you think if she hadn't had the kids around, you would have kind of had that bug to have kids? Were you still at home when she was having...
I was. I was. Yeah, because she stopped about when I was 16. She stopped watching children and she went to work for McDonald's restaurants. No, I don't think that really had. I think just us coming from such a big family and my nieces, you know, that I was always around, yourself included, that we were very close. I always loved being around.
Well, and
children.
we were just joking around about that the other day. At 13 years old, you begged my parents to be my godmother.
Correct.
And that's somewhat of a responsibility for a 13-year-old to want to kind of have that role. And so, but you just always were the kind of, you're only 13 years older than me and 10 years older than my sister. So you were an aunt at a fairly young age.
I was probably more of an older sister.
Yeah, for sure.
guys.
Or like a cousin, kind of thing.
Right.
And so, but that kind of gave you that experience of taking care of not just baby dolls, but real kids. I mean, I and because we have that dynamics, it's kind of how I was with your son as well, your older one.
Correct.
So you talked about your emotional support. Have there been times where you thought, after the phone started ringing and the home daycare was successful, were there times where you thought, I need to close this down? Or even in the last 6 months of things, let's talk about COVID-19. Let's talk about what the pressure that has been put on you in this situation.
Yeah, COVID took us, we were actually just getting ready to expand on the business. We're in the process of adding on 4 classrooms. And so this would like double the amount of children we have right now. I wanted to expand the 4 classrooms, and then COVID hit. And we actually probably lost about 10 families. Due to them either losing their jobs or realizing they are going to be staying at home now for quite a while. Some parents are talking they might not even go back till next year sometime. And so, they're not going to pay for daycare when they're home. So then I decided we're not going to expand, put the kibosh to expanding right now.
Yeah. And you did shut down
We shut down for 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yep. We closed our doors March 27th. We opened back up May 4th.
And how difficult was it? I mean, well, there was a lot of state mandates in the state of Michigan. But how difficult was that, knowing that you not only your families, but your staff as well, of what to do in those situations?
It was very stressful because I was trying to do the best I could for my staff. And
your families. Nobody wants to put their families at risk of getting sick, but nobody wants their families to be in the stressful situation of not knowing how to care, like having childcare.
Well, when I started, I almost was forced to do it because my staff had gotten to a point that they didn't want to come in. They were too scared of contracting it. And I have some staff that have asthma and different things that would be crucial. So I had to initially close down on the 27th of March. And then we were supposed to try and reopen April 13th, I think it was. And still, I couldn't get enough staff to come back. My families understood. And they didn't want us to be in a situation where we were in danger, nor their children. So then, finally, like the beginning of May, we were able to round up enough staff to come back. We started out just the essential workers that we were taking care of their children. State of Michigan has been very, very helpful to the daycares. They have tried to do everything. They have really been over backwards trying to do everything possible to keep us open, keep us above water. I have been very fortunate. I'm doing great, but there are a lot of daycares that are hurting very badly right now. They've lost a lot of clientele. And
so you and I have talked about your kind of future plans, and in the next 5-ish years you plan to to step back from being the director, still owning the business, but step back from that. Does this make you want to step back quicker? This has been probably, I mean, it's unprecedented, right?
It is.
What you've been through.
It's, it's been a stressful period for everyone. But it doesn't necessarily make me want to jump back. It definitely delayed my plans. Now we're getting busy again, and I'm having a lot of phone calls again, replacing the families I've lost. We are going to get the expansion going again. Yeah, I mean, within the next couple of years, I would like to definitely be out of the scene. I would be, just as I've promised, I would do the back scene of it, like payroll, that kind of stuff.
The business side.
The paperwork, that kind of stuff, but be out of the active part.
Yeah.
Working 70 hours a week, it takes a toll on you after a while.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I can imagine. In case you're just joining us, we're in the Hinton Oakley Podcast Center, and I have Jolene Medina with Little Rascals Child Care Center. And so you mentioned an expansion. You mentioned that you're going to step back. What do you see Little Rascals in the next 10, 15 years? Do you think you would ever open another location?
I had talked about it at one time, but Freeland is such a growing town that it really makes no sense for me to leave Freeland to open another location.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't open another one in Freeland just because they'd be competing.
You could always come to Tennessee and open, we don't have the snow time, snow days and stuff that you have, and so you can come down and I have some business connections down there. I'll help you out. But, do you ever stop and think, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I talk to are kind of really in it. They're within the first 5 years of their business. Have you really thought about what you've done and what you've accomplished and how much you've grown in 15 years?
There's times that it takes me back.
Yeah.
I mean, that I've like, wow, I've done this.
Yeah.
I mean, and I look back where I started and where I'm at now, and it's just
and I mentioned the preschool program. That wasn't something that you started with because you couldn't. You had, how many kids did you have when you were at the house?
I had probably about 15 to 20 kids.
Oh, that's way too many kids in your house. But still, you didn't have the amount of ages to kind of, do a full preschool program.
No.
And so now, to be a legitimate preschool program and getting these kids ready for kindergarten.
I think preschool is my favorite part of my job. I love starting out with them in September, and they know very little. And it's the most awesome thing when you see the light bulb click on and they've gotten what you've been working on, for the last 4 months. And you finally see that light bulb click on, and it's just amazing to watch them grow.
Any students in the last 15 years that you think that they really changed your trajectory of your business, of your daycare center?
I love them all, and I see a lot of
That's such a mom thing to say.
I know. You know what hurts me, or the ones that stand out to me, are the ones that I lost. And let me explain that. The ones that maybe had behavioral issues. There was one boy in particular that I loved him with all my heart, but he just became too much to handle for everybody. And we had to ask him to leave. And those are the ones, I've only had to do it a handful of times, but those are the ones that hurt me.
Well, I think
that I always remember.
Yeah, you, and I'm sure at such a young age, I taught high school, and so I can kind of see what these people are doing as adults. But there was such a young age for you to now see. I mean, to know, did you have an impact or did you not? My high school kids will come back and talk to me because I was as they were becoming adults. I'm sure you had a huge impact, but then they're like, well, that was, 15 years ago that I was in preschool. So how much do I remember?
Well, in one little boy, the one in particular is kind of just talking about, I did happen to see him outside at a store, and he came running up to me and gave me a great big hug. And is like, I miss you. And, I proceeded to tell him I miss him too. And, that it's hard to, I don't want to say give up, but to have to let one go.
Well, and it's not even
really
giving, it's, I think it's just the fact of like, if you could have had him one-on-one and you could have wrapped your arms around and surrounded him in your good, kind heart.
Right.
But that's not the way the world works, unfortunately.
I had to let him go because he was affecting other children.
Yeah.
It was affecting other children, and I got to protect them all.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's that tough part about being the person in charge is that if you had been the one teacher and you could have, not made that decision. I think that's, even with the COVID-19, it's hard to make those tough decisions.
Correct.
But when you're the one in charge, nobody tells you what to do, but nobody tells you what to do either, for the good and the bad.
Right. And that is the hard part of any business that you're in is, making those tough choices. It's not easy.
Yeah, for sure. So what advice would you give to somebody that is, maybe particularly moms that are kind of struggling with how to be a working mom but do something that they love and they want to do and all that kind of stuff? What advice can you give? Kind of think back to that time when Gibson was born and you just knew it wasn't right to go back to the bank job.
I think the biggest thing with owning your own business and being a working mom is don't forget about your family, because it's really easy to get wrapped up into your work and not say, oh, they'll understand.
Yeah.
They'll be there when I get home. I went through a lot of my children telling me I love my business more than I love my family, and they were young at that time and didn't understand why I had to be away so much. So it's tough, but I've had to tell myself quite a few times, leave work at work and come home.
Be present at home, I'm sure, too.
Right.
Oh, wait, I just got this employee.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, I think, is when you open that in-home daycare, did you have the dreams of having employees?
No.
I think it was...
I didn't have a dream. This was just going to be kind of almost like my mom.
Yeah.
This was going to be just some supplemental money, and it just kept growing and growing and growing to the point that I started having tons of families come to me and say, will you open a center? I think you should open a center.
And how many employees do you have now?
I have 20 employees.
20 employees. It really... And like I said, obviously your entrepreneurial story is closer to me than any guest I've ever had. I've literally been in your, original home business, spent the night in your original home business. But it just, to me, it makes me so proud of you to know that, like you said, you just thought, well, I want to stay at home. I want to make some money. So I'm going to kind of... And I'll make this legitimate. I'm going to go back to school and get the right certification. But to have 20 employees, 20 people that you're providing income for their families to.
Right.
But that's a lot of pressure too.
It is. And it's, like I said, it takes up a lot of time. And
you've even, I was talking to your husband earlier, and he was talking about one of your employees that you've kind of invested in. To possibly take over things and be, and you paid for her school.
I did.
What kind of decision, was that hard at all to think of that decision, or it was just that's the investment that needed to be made?
I wanted somebody eventually when they take over my business to run it the way I want it.
You just have a little bit of control issues.
Right. I do. I don't like, and it's very hard for me because I baby my families, so to speak. I coddled them. And so somebody walking to step into my shoes is going to have a rough time if they don't do what I have done in the past.
Right.
So, but it's this business is, so to speak, my baby.
Yeah.
I've raised it.
Your fourth son. Would this be a daughter, do you think? Because you have 3 sons. Is this?
I will never have a daughter.
Some moodiness with this business. This was the daughter you never had.
Right. Yeah. I in a sense have raised it. So,
yeah. So what? Maybe that's a little bit of. You're kind of in a different situation. Like I said, the most of the entrepreneurs that I talk to, or I think most of our listeners, are maybe even just considering starting a business. What advice do you maybe have thinking about selling or stepping back or retirement? What's kind of helped you in the last couple of years kind of get yourself prepared for that next step?
Boy, I guess I haven't really. Other than, there's financial things like I'm trying to get my building paid off. I'm real close to that. That will help a lot. I just getting my staff in order, knowing that they know their role when I'm not there.
Emotionally, do you think it's going to be?
It's going to be tough. I have a lot of friends that tell me, you're not going to be able to walk away from this. You can't step away from this.
But I think you're that 5th youngest baby child that's like, no one's going to tell me what to do, what I can and can't do. You watch me. I'm going to be able to step away if that's what I want.
And very much so. Tell me I can't do it, and I'm going to show you how I can.
Yeah.
So, and not to say that I wasn't scared in starting this. I absolutely, there was nights I woke up in the middle of the night, gasping for air because it was overwhelming at points. But yeah, tell me I can't do it, and I'll show you how I can.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, there's been, I think emotionally, yes, it's going to be tough. I've already asked to come back and work preschool, as long as it doesn't rope me back into working there full time.
Yeah.
But I'd like to come in and do the preschool program, be a part of it. And then, like I said, I'd do the vaccine. But
yeah. Well, if people, are you guys on Facebook? Could people find you on Facebook if they just want to check out your?
We are Little Rascals Child Care Center.
Do you have a website?
I do.
You can find it on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
So people can find your website from your Facebook page. People might just want to check it out and see what you have going on there. And so, what do you think? Here's one last thing.
Sure.
What sets Little Rascals apart? You mentioned that there's other daycares and there's. What sets Little Rascals apart from other places? What's your secret ingredients?
I think, I belong to a directors group that we meet once a month. And when I go in there and I listen to the other directors, not to say that I'm the best director out there, but I hear how, they don't put in nearly the amount of hours I do. They don't hold it. But a lot of times you find that your directors are not your owners.
Yeah.
It's very rare to find a owner director.
Yeah. You have the heart and the passion for it, right?
I do.
And you're invested because, like you said, because of the fact that you are the owner. If you run a bad program, it's not that you're not worried about getting fired. You're worried about the bottom line. And
mine, as I tell all of my staff, if they think I'm coming down on them too hard, my name is the one attached to this building, and it's my name. It's me that answers to the parents, so that makes me very... It makes
it different, yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Well, I'm so proud of you, and we talked about this a lot, and I'm just... It's been a lot for the last 15 years to watch how far you've come. I don't often get to... And 15 years ago... I was not, the age I am now. So I was a lot younger, but I wasn't, I don't think I really realized the business aspect of what you've accomplished and where you the fact that you have 20 employees is very huge. And so I'm really proud of you, and I'm really glad that you were able to be on my podcast. So
thank you. And thank you for asking me to do
for
this.
sure. Well, thank you for being here. And once again, this was Jolene Medina in the Hints and Oakley Podcast Center. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Powered by Her. Download your favorites and keep up with new episodes in the Hints and Oakley Podcast Center.